everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us again for another edition of Breathe with Patience, from anxiety to serenity. As you know, I always bring amazing guests who are going to share with you their experience and how they overcame it, right? Because you know that whatever you're going through, you are not alone. And this is going to amaze you. Today, I have with me Miss Kim. Ladies and gentlemen, she is a veteran living with PTSD. She has had some experiences with anxiety, and she has learned tools that has worked for her. And today she will be sharing them with us. She's a renowned speaker. She has been on multiple podcasts, and today we are fortunate to have her with us today. So without much ado, I would like to turn it over to Miss Kim so that she will share with us her story. Miss Kim, how did it start for you?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on. This is so fun. I love doing these things.
So tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, I am a mother of a grown daughter who is out and on her own. I'm very proud of her. I also am the mom to a dog. I have a rescue dog. His name is Dexter, and he is full of personality. We will put it that way.
Yes.
And he's wonderful. And I am a Air Force veteran. I served in the Air Force quite a few years ago. We'll just keep it at that. And I am a published author and writer and public speaker. And that's what I do. That's who I am.
Awesome, awesome. Could you tell us your experience with anxiety any way, anyhow, so that our listeners will know that in spite of all the accolades and all the achievements, you are a human being and you have experienced, you feel what they feel, and then you have found your way to where you are right now. So please take it away.
Okay. Years ago, when I was actually in the military, I was sexually assaulted by two men. And through that experience, that puts a weight on you when something like that happens to someone. And I can only speak from my own personal experience. I was during that time, that incident, I was taken away for hours, and I was able to get away. And it was the early morning hours. And it was very, very cold, middle of winter where I was at that time. And I recall, and I was very young at that time. It was right before my 19th birthday. So I was still 18 years old at that time. So a kiddo is how I look at it. I was a kid still. But I remember running through this very deep snow and how cold it was and how hard it was to breathe. It hurt my lungs to breathe. And running through this deep snow. And the three things I remember most about that time is how cold it was, how it hurt to breathe, and how the moonlight glistened on the snow, and how beautiful that was.
Wow, Kim.
And however your brain works, I saw beauty, even though I was in the midst of this crazy mental thing of I was working very hard. Looking back now, I could see what I was doing. At that time, of course, I think I blanked. I think I just blanked out. And those were the things that my brain let me notice. Breathing and the glistening of the snow.
Wow.
But I remember, as I'm running, it was as if each step I was building a wall. Each step was a brick, and I was, by golly, I was going to build that wall very strong. So nothing could get out. All that was going to be locked behind that wall.
Wow.
And it wasn't until years later that I realized when you build a wall that high and that strong, nothing can get out, but nothing can get in either.
Wow.
And it was probably 12 years after I was out of the service, and I kept all that locked up. 12 years is a long time.
It is a long time. So are you saying that after the incident, you still served?
For a short time.
Okay.
All right. Time.
Talking about snow, you know, it's snowing around here right now. So how deep would you say that snow was? Was it to your knee, to your hip?
It was well past my knees.
Whoa.
So, it's like I was slogging through it, a bit. And I don't even know how far I ran, because I do remember I don't know where I was. I was just running. And honestly, there's still stuff that hasn't fully come out from that time. The brain is amazing. The human spirit is amazing. And how you can lock certain things away. It's amazing.
It's
I know I
amazing.
keep saying that, but anyone who has gone through a traumatic experience, whether it's the type I went, I mean, everybody has some sort of trauma within their lives. And depending upon the level of it and how it is that you personally deal with it. And a lot of times I think it's how we're all made by God.
Yes.
And I think that he made me that way. There's certain things that are only supposed to come out when they're supposed to come out.
Exactly.
When you're at a time that you can physically and emotionally and rationally deal with it in a healthy way. For me, it took about 12 years.
Yes, I wanted to go there. I wanted to go so fast forward to 12 years. How did you finally get to the point of even opening up or seeking help? Was it easy for you?
No. No, it was not. I had a day. It was a year that many big things, like life-altering things, were happening. There were a couple deaths in the family, and a friend of mine committed suicide. And then it just seemed like it was boom, boom, boom. One big life-altering thing after another. And one day it was just too much. And I felt all of this weight and all of this, I always call it a swirl, this weight and this swirl. And I found myself on my living room floor, on my knees, sobbing. I mean, it's the ugly cry sobbing, where your whole body is into it, and I remember saying the words, "Please, God, please, please." I was begging. And at that time, and for many years prior, I told myself I didn't believe in God. And if he was there anywhere, I did not like him at all. I wanted nothing to do with him. Not a thing.
At that time, at a point in time, you were calling on someone you didn't have a relationship with.
And I wasn't even sure I believed in. And there I am on my knees calling out to a God that I wasn't sure I believed in.
Did he come? Did he show up?
Yes, he did.
Tell us about that.
At that time, I didn't go to church. Like I said, didn't care for him. Didn't like a God I didn't believe in, which makes no sense, but that's how my brain was at that time. But as I'm sobbing, and that kind of stuff, it's just like the soul hurts. Your soul actually hurts when you're in that place. And in the midst of that, I felt, and I always describe it this way, always, it was as if a whisper from behind. It was a gentle whisper. And in that whisper, that gentleness of it, were the words, "But those who hope in the Lord will soar on wings like eagles."
Wow.
And I remember I literally did this, turned around. I'm like, where did that come from? And I was in a frantic mess at that point, sobbing. I'm like, oh my goodness, where did that come from? Where did that come from? And then I am thinking, well, those words kind of sound Bible-ish. And I'm like, well, they kind of sound, they sound, like they would come from a Bible. So I kept my brain, I became frantic. I'm like, there's got to be a Bible in this house. There's got to be one somewhere. So I was running around the house, looking in cupboards, looking in drawers for a Bible, and I finally found one. I go back to the living room, my living room floor, and I literally just got back down on my knees on the living room floor. And I opened up the Bible, and I'm still frantic because I'm thinking these words have to be here somewhere, but I don't know. I've never heard them before. And I'm opening up the Bible. I'm like, well, there's no table of contents. There's no index. How do you find anything in here? And I was really anxious. And I took I mean, it is kind of comical looking back, but
Yes.
I remember taking the Bible, and I just went, whatever, and I just threw it on the ground. And I was just so worked up, and I remember being on my knees and then just kind of like put my hands on my knees and knelt down.
Mm-hmm.
And as I did that, there's, the Bible laying open where I threw it. And I just kind of reached forward and pulled it towards me and just looked down at it. And it was these specific words. It was like they were lit up somehow because they just jumped off the page. And the words were, "But those who hope in the Lord will soar on wings like eagles."
Wow.
And that stopped me because I went, that's what I just heard. Yeah. And did all of a sudden I love God and, jump right into it? No. That's a process. We're all works in progress. But that stopped me. And that was such a huge turning point for me. And I mean, really, really a big turning point. And I actually, if you were here and you could see to my side, I have it's actually a big print of an eagle flying, and those words are on it. It's hanging on my wall in my office. So every day for years and years, that's what I read. But those who hope in the Lord. I struggle with anxiety, and sometimes it would just be overwhelming where you don't leave the house. And you're hyper aware, at least for me, my experience, I'd be hyper aware of all my surroundings. And I was in that fight or flight mode all the time. And I'm a member of a veteran post here, and I call them my family. They're my big brothers. They're actually combat Vietnam vets. And they had noticed this change in me, this shift, this personality, whatever it was, and the edginess that I was constantly in, and weight loss and big circles under my eyes because I wasn't sleeping. And they said, you know what? And they always call me kid. They said, you know what, kid, we don't know what you're going through or what caused this, but we recognize the signs, and you need to go talk to somebody at the VA. And if you don't go, we will drag you kicking and screaming. And
some good accountable friends.
Yes. And I said I didn't need to go. I was strong. I didn't need to go. So they did take me kicking and screaming. They did. And they dropped me off and said, get your bleep in there and go talk to somebody. So, they had set the appointment up and everything for me. And I went and talked. And the tough thing was, though, at that time, this is years ago, there's nothing in place for females. There was no female counseling, no female programs, nothing to do with military sexual trauma. So they really didn't know what to do with me. And my counselor at that time was very honest and said, and it was a man. Yeah. And he said, I honestly don't know what to do with you. And he goes, because obviously I've not been in your shoes. Yeah. I have no training in this. At least he was very honest about it. I stuck with him for quite a few years. But I also know that I couldn't completely share everything I probably needed to really help me heal. Right. Simply because he was a man. Yeah. Do I hate men? No. But at that time, that's it's such a hard thing that you buried so deep, and it's so personal. And when you have to let all that out, I mean, in detail, you're opening that whole thing up again. And for me, I would lose sleep again. Nightmares would come back. I'd start losing weight again. And that edginess, I call it edginess. It's anxiety. Yeah. The edginess would come and just stay. And it's, to me, and I'm very visual, so I always come up with pictures of what feelings look like. Yeah. To me, edginess is it's a weight on my shoulders. and it literally just kind of drags you down until all you want to do is just lay on the couch,
Right.
and just be in a quiet. You don't want to be around people. You don't want to talk to anybody. You go in your hole. I call it, I go in my hole. I just crawled in my
Yeah.
hole. I still do that now, years later? Yes, I do, but not anywhere near to the extreme of what it could be, because over the years, and now I for probably the past 8 years, I have a female counselor,
Okay.
and which is wonderful because it's so much easier. But she has helped me to build, to add tools into my toolbox that I use. And so I always joking, she'll give me something else and I'll be like, oh, another tool I can put in my toolbox. But without that, I visualize it as a toolbox that I carry with me. There are times if I'm in a place that's very crowded, that edginess will come up on me. It'll just creep up on me. And then I'll notice my chest is getting tight. Or, I'm like, I find myself doing this deep breathing, but it's not the relaxing kind. You're just going, okay, get control. So it doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes in certain circumstances it will. And so I'm able to pull out, a tool from my toolbox, or I get like a visualization. One of the best ones that I love sharing with people, and if you're visual, it really helps. It's called the projection booth. And it took years for them to figure out the perfect thing for me to be able to pull myself out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So the projection booth, you see yourself in 3 different ways. You're either on the screen in the movie, you're in the seat watching the movie, or you're in the projection booth in complete control. Mm. And they start you out in, pretend you're in the seat watching the movie, and you discuss of what you see. You're watching yourself, of course, but you're doing it in third person. Mm-hmm. And you get too edgy talking about it. They say, okay, zip line yourself back up in the projection booth, mm-hmm. because you can turn the volume down.
Wow.
You can turn it off. And that was one tool that as soon as we practiced that a couple times, it worked so well for me. It's not going to work for everybody, but for me, I'm very visual. And for me to picture myself, I can hear it and everything, zip lining myself back up to that projection booth, because in there, I am in control.
Control, right.
And the incident, I had zero control. Mm-hmm. But you can't let stuff like that rule your life. You have to take back control of it. You've got to be able to shift the things in your mind. And then also, at least I found out over the years, you must throw it up to God. Yes. Just toss it up there. You've got those days. Yeah, you just throw it up there. Say, God, I can't do it anymore. Here, you take it now. And I've done that, and I'll do it in the future. None of us have easy lives. Life is not easy all the time. Yeah. And even on the good days, you need to throw up a thank you and throw it all up to him. But especially on those bad days, when you feel like you should be on your knees praying, get down on your knees and pray. Yes. And thank him. I've learned now over the years that I can. Other storms come, of course, and I have found that I can thank him during a storm now. And I notice blessings in the midst of a storm. Before you would just want to crawl up in a ball and cry. Now I'm like, well, no, I know who I am, and I know who's got me covered.
Woo!
I know I'm a child of the one true King. Boom, right there. Boom.
Thank you so much, Kim. An amazing conversation. Thank you so much for taking us all the way back from your teens to 12 years later, the journey for you. Thank you for being so authentic, letting us know that even your relationship, your spirituality didn't just shift just because of that one encounter, but it was profound and it was the turning point. And I'm so thankful that you still surrounded yourself with a group of people who pulled you, literally dragged you to see your breakthrough. And also when you got to the place, you realized that you needed something more. A man couldn't do it for you. Sometimes it works for some people, but others, they went the other way. I'm happy that you are a work in progress and always working on yourself and every day. Thank you for the tools, the boot. I love it too. I love it. I love it. I use NLP, so I know what you're talking about. So it takes you right there so that you are in control. You can turn down the volume, white out or black it out, whatever it is.
Yep.
Our mind is really, really powerful. Thank you so very much for everything. One last question that I would like you to share with our audience is, so since from your teens till now, what does it come out for you when you see a teenager having anxiety or going through something? How was it for you as a mother watching your child grow up during that time, and then you flash back to what happened to you when you were a teen? Does it bring up some issues? And what would you say to a teenager who might be watching this with their parents right now?
You know, I was asked by my pastor to give a talk on just what we talked about to a group of teens at a summer camp, a summer Christian camp. And I remember thinking, there's no way I can gear this towards teens. It's not a pretty story. There's no way to pretty it up. And I remember my pastor asking me, how old were you? I said, 18. He said, yeah, these kids need to hear this. And that was the most nervous I'd ever been in sharing this story, was in front of those kids. And there was probably, and it was young men and young ladies. There was probably about 50, 60 of them. And we're out in the middle of the woods with a huge bonfire. And it's evening. And I'm thinking, oh, great. This is, the atmosphere. I'm telling this horrible story, But I shared the story, and the only thing you could hear was the fire crackling. That was it. There wasn't a sound. And later, a young lady, after I was done talking, a young girl under 18 came up to me, and I get all teary. And she said, I thank you for sharing your story. And I'm like, well, sure, sweetie, no problem. And she just had this look on her face, almost like fear. And I said, is there something that you need to share? Because I'm a safe person to share it with. And she said, I think that you were talking to me. And I'm thinking, oh, you too. So I gave her a big hug. This really does get me worked up because my heart just broke for her, because you don't wish any of that on anybody ever.
No, not at all.
And I remember giving her a big hug, and I remember whispering in her ear, you make sure that you talk to someone, and it will be okay. You will be okay, because you are beautiful in God's eyes and in mine. And I found out a couple weeks later, my pastor called me and said, that young lady that you spoke with, that evening, she pulled her counselor aside and shared her story with the counselor. And they were going to get her the help that she needed. And that probably wouldn't have happened unless I had been there in the woods with a fire crackling behind me, sharing a dark story to a bunch of teenagers that I didn't want to do it. I almost didn't do it. But I was obviously put there by God for that one young, sweet soul. And I pray about her still a lot. I haven't seen her since years ago. And I pray that she was able to find a smoother road to travel on, and that her soul was able to settle a little bit.
Thank you so very much. You see, everything that happens to us, present, past, future, it is not to be wasted. It is all for his divine plan, so that we will be a source of motivation and help to someone else. So thank you for being that vessel that God used, and he will continue to use you on bigger platforms. So talking about that, can you share with the audience how we can reach you? If someone goes like, oh, I want to get in touch with you, any way they can reach out to you, please?
They can visit me on my website, which is kimlenglingauthor.com. And my last name is spelled Lengling. So it's kimlenglingauthor.com. I'm also on Facebook. And I'm working on actually a 3-book series called When Grace Found Me.
Hmm.
And that I share my story in volume 1, which is going to be released here in probably a week or so. But of when Grace found me, and that's part of my story, is where he found me on my living room floor.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Kim. This has been amazing. Ladies, gentlemen, this is the show. Breathe with patience, from anxiety to serenity. She made it. She found it. If she can do it, so can you. I can't wait to see you on our next episode. This has been your girl, Patience Hemenway, Master Serenity Coach at PSG International. Take care now.